Hi, in this video I'm going to look at the difference between profit and cash flow. Now, many novice investors get confused by this issue, but actually it's less complex than it sounds, and once you understand it, you're well on the way to analysing companies successfully. So probably the easiest way to explain this is to start looking at an example. So I'm going to look at an imaginary business called Ed's Restaurant. I'm the head chef, and we're going to see how things went in that business for 1 month. So let's say it's August, Ed's business restaurant, and in the month of August, £100,000 went into the restaurant's bank account, and that's mainly coming from customers who are paying for their meals. And in the same month, £90,000 went out of the bank account, and so that was paying for rent and staff wages and all the rest of it. So obviously 100 take away 90, we have £10,000 left over at the end of the month. And you might think, well, that's easy then. The restaurant made a profit of £10,000 in August. But actually you'd be wrong. This figure is cash flow. That's how much cash the business generated in the month of August. But profit is a different figure, and it's drawn up under calculations approved by accountants and financial regulators. So let's look at September for this business and see how things went then. And it'll be easier with these numbers to explain the difference. So once again, £100,000 came into the restaurant's bank account in September. But this figure is very different. You've got all the normal costs, the wages and the rent and all the rest of it, but there was also one big one-off cost, which was a new oven that the business needed, or some new ovens the business needed, and they cost £50,000. They cost £60,000. So we've got 90, the normal cost, plus £60,000 for the oven. That's £150,000. So the difference is minus £50,000. So the business burned £50,000 of cash in September. But using the accounting conventions, the accounting rules, it did not make a loss of £50,000. The loss, or the profit, was actually very different. So let's look at the profit and loss figure for September. Once again, we've got 100,000 coming in, and we've got those normal costs of 90. But what do we do with the cost of the ovens? Well, we do what's known as depreciation. And so roughly speaking, I probably won't need to buy new ovens for at least 5 years. So the accounting rules say, well, fine, we depreciate that cost. So this is a cost that's effectively going to be affecting the business for the next 5 years. That's 60 months. The one-off cost was £60,000. So we can depreciate this cost at £1,000 a month. So suddenly the costs for the business are £90,000 plus £1,000, which is £91,000 for the month. And that's because we're doing this depreciation. We're depreciating the value of the ovens over a period of 5 years. And so suddenly the profit in the month of September is £9,000. Remember, in September we burned, in terms of cash flow, we burned £50,000. But that's not a good figure to look at because that was a one-off cost. This is a much more realistic figure, this £9,000 profit, and it gives you a better idea of the underlying health of the business. Now, depreciation, that's not the only difference between profit and loss and cash. There's lots of other issues, but I mean, one issue is that sometimes the revenue in the profit and loss account isn't recognized, to use the jargon, at the same moment as the cash comes into the bank account. So if I was a builder and you were a property developer, you might decide to pay me £5 million for the new building I'm doing for you before building work has even started. That's when the cash came into my bank account. But the accounting rules would say I couldn't recognise that £5 million revenue until later in the process, until at least some of the building had been constructed. And there's similar issues with costs. Costs in the profit and loss account aren't necessarily incurred at the same time as the money, the cash, goes out of the bank account. So that's a very quick overview on how profit and loss works. And since I've said profit and loss gives you a really good idea of the underlying performance of the business, you might think that profit and loss is the best thing to focus on. And you certainly do need to focus on profit and loss, but it's a bit of a cop-out. You also need to focus on cash flow as well. And that's because profit and loss can easily be massaged by accountants and finance directors to make the numbers look good. There's quite a lot of flexibility in the figures for profit and loss. There's also some flexibility in cash as well, but it's harder to massage the cash figures. So you really need to look at cash as well as profit and loss. And also, cash can give you a really big sort of warning signal that there are problems with a business. If you're seeing that cash isn't just being burnt in 1 month, well, like when the new oven was built, £50,000 burned for that. If you're seeing that cash is being burned up month after month after month, then that suggests that the business is in serious trouble and may be heading for bankruptcy. If you haven't got enough cash coming in and too much cash is going out, you can't sustain your business over the long term. So the basic truth is look at both profit and loss and cash, and then you get a good overall balanced view of the health of the business. Now I'm going to look at more at these issues in future videos, so until then, good luck with your investing.